Welcome to Bon Mots, where we'll be applying the Manzer-Ormosi-Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or Mots! This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised.
Ciao, and welcome to the Los Signals movie review of Call Me By Your Name, the final film on the Oscars Best Pictures list for this year. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Louis Duran.
Good evening.
Scott Thurlow.
Hello there.
And Stephen Ormosi.
What name did you call me by?
Not mine.
Good.
So I will start off with the funny logline, which is gay men and the women who love them.
Indeed.
For more information on this topic, we shall go to our reporter on the field, Stephen Ormosi.
All right. So this is. I'll give you the very brief synopsis first, and then I'll give you a little bit more of an in-depth rundown. But this is a love story between a guy who comes to. I guess he's a PhD student or something who comes to his professor's place in Italy and spends 6 weeks there in the summer and gets to know his professor's son, and they form a relationship and fall in love. And it's kind of just their story of how that happened, like meeting and talking and coming to become really close to each other in that 6 weeks time span. It's very much a like teenage summer love story, which we discussed a little bit earlier. But when the story begins, he shows up, and Elio, the son, doesn't much like him at first. I think he's put off by his arrogance and is like
Thinks he's this typical like dickhead American.
Yeah,
It's American bravado.
yeah. But throughout the course of the film, there's a really, to me, very natural, just him coming to realize that he likes this bravado and like the way that this guy is, and then they kind of come together. And
They do come together. Go on.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they come at the same time. It doesn't say. The movie doesn't say.
Fair enough.
All right, there is an apricot scene.
Anyway.
But
Speak about that later. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
But well, maybe we'll put that in style. But there is this, to me, a very natural progression of the way that they kind of fall in love, and it's shown throughout the movie very artistically, and I think very well, a very well written script. There's not much to the plot. They meet, they fall in love,
It's their relationship.
and then and then it's the end of the summer, and see you never, I guess.
Later.
And there's a very brief section at the end where it turns out that Oliver, the
grad
student who is there for the summer, turns out that he's getting married, and Elio's like sad but also happy. And that's pretty much it.
Also happy. The credits roll over him crying while looking at
for
the
an
fire.
extended period.
Right, but he looks somewhat satisfied in what he's in his summer.
In his journey.
to some
Yeah, I think
extent.
it's pretty indicative that he has closure.
Yeah.
Like he's finally realized that there was a beginning and there was a middle, and then there's.
And the one last thing I want to mention is I think a lot of that has to do with the conversation at the very end that he has with his father.
Yeah, true.
Which is really a really powerful scene and a really good scene. I liked it a lot. Why are you laughing?
No,
Tell me why you're laughing.
I was going to say that it's much more closure than most of us got from our summer romances.
Yeah.
But I did have one back in the day, and I talked to the girl afterwards, and she claimed to be a lesbian. So I had the reverse of the Call Me By Your Name.
She said
You had
"Don't call me
Marzia's-
by your
No, yeah,
name."
You were Marzia.
Marzia,
You were
exactly.
Marzia in this part.
Yeah.
Marzi and the other. Who's the other girl?
I
I don't remember.
That showed up at the
Kiara.
end, very late to the
Something like
to the
that.
bus.
Yeah, I think it was Kiara. CHIA.
Anyways.
But this is a very, in a way, a very formulaic summer romance movie,
Yeah.
except that it's dealing with pretty heavy themes. And the themes in the plot are heavily interwoven.
Yeah.
And it deals with a lot of like what it takes place in 1980s, and it takes place with like the status of homosexuals at that time, the fear of being outed in a way,
And that social
Like,
climate.
Yeah.
Sure.
and the different types of like. All right, so there's 3 marriages you get to see in this film. You get to see the parents' marriage, which it turns out, spoiler alert, the father is implied to have been gay all along.
Himself as well, yeah.
And he's in a happy marriage, but he's not as happy as he could have been. You have the Italian couple in there who are happy in they're completely complementary to each other. They're both arguing, but I see them as very like satisfied in that kind of heteronormative way. And then you also see, and I think the happiest relationship you see is the gay couple, and where like one's cradling the other's head in the arms as they're listening to music, and you get to see what Oliver and Elio could have been if they had chosen the certain
They're possible
path.
paths, like sort of.
And it's because of the themes, it elevates the. It's weird for me to actually grade this because I don't know where to cut off points I'm going to give to narrative, which seems pretty straightforward, and points to themes.
All right, so I'll try to convince you, or like, here's how I'm going to cut it up.
Mhm.
I'm going to give plot probably a 2. Pretty solid to strong 2,
Mhm.
but not full credit. But I do agree with you that thematically, it's the plot like serves the theme in a lot of ways. So I'm going to give a lot when we get the themes shortly. I'll probably the points I'm taking away here, I'll put into themes. So overall, though, it was a fine narrative, yes, but like you said, it basically was just a relationship, and yes, so it explores them as characters and how they deal with it, and over, like you said, a summer fling in Italy over the course of 6 weeks, and how that changes them afterwards as people. So yeah, so given all that, but it was, I think one of you said it was a slow burn as well. So like, yeah, it felt natural, but that means like not a lot happens, like essentially. So I'm gonna give it like I said, I'll take a little bit of points off just because it felt a little slow at times, but the story itself was fine, and yes, as tied into themes. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'm looking at it too, just because 'cause even it is character driven. To me, it was formulaic. There was times I was calling out things and they happen on screen not long after,
That's true.
which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not always a bad thing. But this for me, I think it took me out of it at first. It just, I think it just could have been done better. I was the one that said it's a slow burn. It could have been a little more, I think, not condensed, but it could have been tighter. I'd say.
More taut.
Yeah, I agree. I see what you mean. They could cut out like 12 minutes of the film. It was like 2:12, by the
Yeah.
way.
So I have not read the source material of this.
Yeah, me neither.
None of us here have.
I
yes.
think that it is it feels like it's attempting to be very like honor the source material a lot, and in previous works I've seen that are trapped to that. There tends to be a little like not everything in a book translates well.
It loses
to
a little
film.
bit. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I think that might have been the case a little bit. I'm not saying it is, but I'm more on your guys' side with that. So I'm probably going to give it a strong 2, but a 2 nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to give this a 3. Like, romance movies in general are not really my bag. This movie I enjoyed a lot. But it never lost me. I understood what it was doing. It was slow at points, but I understood that slowness to be kind of indicative of the way that these times are. Like when they're like there are certain times where they're apart that seem like they were like crawling by, and like that's what Elio as a character was feeling at those points. Or like
Sure. So imparted that sensation, yes.
Yeah.
To your point there's this one scene where Elio is attempting to write a letter to Oliver. Like, I haven't heard from you. And I believe it was the next day he was writing that.
It was a very short time frame. Yes.
Which Oliver responds with, grow up.
Because he's the angsty teenager. I was going to get to that. But
You're right. It does, like, the time aspect of this narrative, I think, is purposely distorted to make it feel like
longer or shorter.
What it would be
yeah.
like to be in love as a child.
So, and that's kind of what I mean. I get where you guys are coming from, and I get it was slow at points, but for me, that didn't really bother me as much as I suppose it could have, or perhaps it bothered you guys a little bit more than it did me. So I'm going to give it a 3. You guys are going with 2s, though?
Yeah, I just have one final thought. Like, you're right. So it imparts that sensation, but doesn't make it, like, not feel slow. You know what I mean? So, like, it's going for that effect, but it also is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I get that, but like that didn't bother me. Is
I get
what
you.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel you, but I'm still sticking with the 2.
I have one final point: is that I don't know if I would have liked this movie trimmed, because it feels like it gives it that natural progression. I've seen a lot of movies where love stories feel forced, or like I feel like I missed something, and it like this does feel natural. It just.
It feels strangely.
Think this is I'm going to be honest. I don't think this is a 10 movie, and this is the point I think I'm going to drop the point off of for.
Okay. I think, strangely, I don't know why this just occurred to me, and I don't really even, I need to go back and like think about this more and understand my own reasoning why I'm connecting these two things.
Okay.
But it feels almost like Great Gatsby-ish to me in terms of like, there are points in this movie where I'm like, what is this doing? But I think back on it, and that actually did something to me emotionally. And like Gatsby, when I was reading Gatsby, it was kind of the same way.
I can see it.
That's that. I honestly have no further. I don't know why I thought that, but
fair enough. Interesting angle. I can see it now. You mentioned it. I wouldn't have thought of it outright, but I am still sticking with the 2.
Well, Scott, give us your thoughts on the themes.
Alrighty, so as we just, not even implied, outright said that the themes are heavily tied into the narrative itself, as you said, because it's a younger gay man, and not even like an older one per se, but older than him, right? Like grad student in Italy, in that culture of 1980s.
I think they're 17 and 24 is what it was.
Okay, yeah, so like that's a big of a difference, I guess. But anyways, like it's them like meeting each other and having sort of an awkward like flirtation for a bit, and then like in fact like then starting a relationship and all, but of course growing as people, and especially like that section of society. So yeah, it was very well done. I mean, I can only speak as an outside observer in a sense, but nevertheless, like I thought it was well handled, and I think it's an important thing again to draw a parallel to the the struggles of peoples in our times. So I think it, like I said, as you mentioned, E, we haven't read the source material, so I'm not sure how it was handled there. But if they're sticking closely, I think it was maturely presented, and certainly not like in terms of like versus The Post or versus like even like something like Detroit. I think we said like the movie's not slapping you in the face with the fucking theme like all the time. It's naturally there as the characters interact. So
I like how it. So in a way, Elio is becoming or finding himself in the perfect environment for that. Both his parents understand
that's true. Yeah,
that he is and accept him for being
he has
that,
progressive parents. We'll say.
Yeah, and
sure.
And it's interesting to see a work where he still has the heartbreak of losing the love, and mostly because the person he falls in love with, the person who is you actually. I was really happy for them towards the end of the movie, watching them be like enjoying Malta, I believe it was, towards the end. That Oliver, because he is stuck in the same place that Elio's father is. When I need to marry a woman, I will sacrifice my happiness for society's prejudices and or like what's. As an American man, what is expected of me? And it was a very interesting look at that world. And like I've had friends who were gay and explained to me the trials that they went through with coming or still haven't come out to their parents because they're afraid of the repercussions of it. And there's a lot about identity here. There's a lot about who. So, to actually bring it out of this for a second, there's the discussion between Elio and his girlfriend at the time when they're talking about what you hide from other people and how love is about finding someone you can be truly honest with. And them finding a person that, like, who accepts them for, like, call me by your name. I accept you wholly as who you are, and you accept me wholly for who I am.
Sure.
I don't know. I think it was very powerful. I think it was like very touching at times, and I'm going to give it a very, very strong one.
Yeah, for me, I would give it a 1 as well. I think the homosexual aspect, I think, is kind of overshadowed for me with the identity, because most of it, a lot of what Elio is going through is not necessarily acceptance from people around him, but himself.
Exactly. God damn you.
And when he starts actually is dating Marcia, it's shortly after he sees Oliver, dancing with the woman, whatever, Shari or and ends up having a relationship with her, and then at that point he feels like he kind of goes introverted and rejects himself as well, and now he feels that there's expectations that the outer world is casting on him, but it's really just himself not being able to accept what he truly, the true person that he is.
Yeah, well said. So the identity thing I was saving for actually protagonist, but I certainly it's there as well. It applies to both because they sort of exemplify that theme with each other.
I do have one last comment to make about that, which I thought was interesting, that they paralleled being gay to the people who denied being Jewish and hid that from, because it was not accepted. Like, what was it? We're discreet.
Yes,
Jews,
yeah.
Mother said.
There was that line, yeah.
I thought it was just a thing, a thought.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point that they brought up in the film. I think you guys mostly talked about what I wanted to discuss, so I'm gonna pretty much just agree.
Gonna back us up.
Yeah,
give it a 1.
And give it a 1.
Very nice.
Okay, so also with themes, we'll move on to antagonists with Louis.
Speaking of,
so I mean, there's really not much to antagonists, except, I mean, Elio is kind of the driving force of alienating Oliver when he first arrives. Thinking that he's a little arrogant, not really sure how to feel around him, and it's like the more he starts to accept the relationship, and that he becomes like his sexuality becomes validated, it kind of dissipates. Like, it's a slow burn. But for me, antagonist really was just it was revolved mainly around Elio. Like, you can say he's a protagonist, but for me, he was the one. Like, he's a 17-year-old. Obviously, he has a crazy with emotions, knee-jerk reactions. But I really can't say too much otherwise. But for me, it comes down to a 0. I mean, it's totally fine what they were going for, but I don't really feel like there was necessarily antagonist. I don't think you really need an antagonist at this point.
All right, so I think there's 2 ways you can answer this one. That's the one I was leaning towards originally, but I was thinking about it just precast, and I'm going to steal this from you probably, Steve-O, so I apologize. Like, you might say something like this. Given what you just said, Elio thus becomes his own antagonist, essentially. Like, he's antagonized by himself because it's part of growing up, especially, who he is at the time. And also, this is the one you definitely say, Steve-O, that Oliver and Elio are antagonists to each other in their relationship as it unfolds, which is something we definitely said about, I believe, The Big Sick, maybe a different movie this season. A similar, romance movie. So, you can take it that way.
Phantom Thread.
Yeah, Phantom Thread is
exactly. So you can take it that way, because, again, it's a character study about a relationship. So I'll open up, and then you guys can speak about it.
Well, I mean, yes, that you're right. That is something I would say. Although I don't know if I feel that way about this film.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
I don't think that they really antagonize each other in the film. In fact, I'm leaning more towards what you said, Lou, in that there's not really a strong antagonist in this movie. And Ian, I spoke to you before the podcast, and I said I might give antagonist a 0, and you said I may have something to say about that. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. But yeah,
to take a cue from Scott and how he does it, there's an abstract antagonist here. One, I count Oliver as a protagonist, first of all. Even though Elio is the obvious main protagonist.
He's basically your POV character.
I think Oliver has secondary protagonist status.
I'll go with that.
Oliver is, throughout the movie, antagonized by himself being gay. And more so about what that entails and what society puts upon it. It's obviously shown that he would prefer to be with Elio throughout the entire towards the end, but He has to get married. He's hesitant at first. They have to do an even more excruciating song and dance than regular dating.
Just regular courting.
He was like, I need to hit on you without giving away the fact that I'm actually sexually interested. It's that entire thing is driving Oliver's choices throughout most of the movie, and in that sense, that although Elio comes from a more progressive group where he's again,
they're more accepting of his
both his
lifestyle,
acceptance of his parents, but also his naivety of being 17. He hasn't yet gotten to the point of the society saying, "No, that's wrong. We're going to punish you for it." So it's almost a through Oliver's being being taught by society that what he's doing is wrong, what he's doing is shameful. I mean, after they have sex for the first time, he is like, "You're not going to hold this against me, are you? You don't think what we did is wrong, do you?" He's as nervous as Elio is in this situation.
Sure.
They're both insecure about their sexuality, even though Oliver is this,
he projects confidence, as it was said in the film.
He does.
Sure.
But he projects confidence with women, but he doesn't project confidence for what he's actually interested in, and that antagonizes Elio throughout this. That kind of what's the mathematical transitive property of transitive property of antagonism? I'm going to call this.
All right. Well, I like that phrase for sure. But like I said, I think you can look at it in that angle, which sometimes we do. So so while there's no outward antagonist, they feel the pressures both internally and somewhat to a degree externally.
Well, more so Oliver.
That's my argument.
And Oliver puts it onto Elio.
But I originally viewed it the way you viewed it, Louis, but the more I thought about it, like I said, you can cut it up that way, and I think the film was mature enough, intelligent enough to, I think they were going for that at the end of the day, so that's my argument for a 1 at this point.
Yeah, I agree that that's the strongest antagonist in the film. But from the not from the very beginning, but it doesn't really. It's a strange thing, right? Because it doesn't stop them from doing what, from getting together, but it does stop them from being together in the end, right?
Summer loving, it happens so fast.
It does happen so fast. But in terms of that, I think I'm still going to stick with a 0 on this. Yeah.
Well, I do want to mention as well that all these, just about the main cast that we see throughout the movie, a lot of them are lying to each other. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, especially with the reveal at the end with the father, I was a little disappointed. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Okay.
Because I'm just sitting there thinking, it's not necessarily, obviously there's no real payoff. We get the complete, there's a closure that Elio has. We don't know who Oliver's marrying. We don't know if it's a man or if it's a woman. So that's another. It could easily be another fake romance.
Well, not
fake
in 1980s
wouldn't be in
America.
83. I was going to say.
It's implied that it's a woman strongly.
I think it's
I would say
suggested. Yes.
But I mean that was just one detail. So I was just like, you guys are all lying to each other.
Yeah, that's fair. But
So,
liars are all traitors. Liars are traitors.
That's always good for a
So
1.
are you sticking with a 0 or are you giving it a 1?
I'm gonna say 0. Yeah.
Right. I'm going with the solid 1. Soft to solid, but still, I think there's enough there for me to give it a 1 on this front.
So on to me with protagonists, and as I said, I think that Oliver and Elio are both the protagonists. Elio, honestly, if you stripped out the themes of this movie, you could have replaced a female character, and it would have played as a perfect, that kind of traditional summer. To the point of listening to music on headphones, he works. He works, and as I said, I think the point is I really actually cared about the relationship towards the end. I was happy for them. I felt their victory to a certain extent, and I think that makes a good protagonist. So I'm going to give that a 1.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say or add, but I think they both did a good job as actors for sure, and they definitely had a lot to work with for their characters, and again, portraying a youthful love. That regardless of what kind of relationship it is, the growing up and the angst that comes along with that for sure. So yeah, I think like you said, they shared screen time, so it's 50-50 pretty much. But they did, like I said, the script gave them a lot to work with, and I think they did a lot with it. A lot of times, very nicely, subtly. If you, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't didn't feel unnatural in any way to me. So I'm gonna give them a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't have much more to add. They both were both parts, Elio and Oliver, well acted, well portrayed, and I believed their
bought into
romance.
Yeah.
And that's that's all I really had to.
Yeah, for me, for sure, it was all organic. I mean, just every scene it felt it felt true that was happening. At that moment in time, it wasn't scripted. Nothing felt forced. So I really like the acting of the actor's name Elliot. I'm not sure.
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet. He did a great job portraying all the angsty emotions that I remember feeling. As very.
Yep.
He was good as a 17-year-old, little
like,
shit,
just brooding. It's what you do.
But I'll easily say, like, Oliver's not that far off. He's just a little 7 years old. We're all just grown up children.
If you're 17 years old, you're in love. That's what you do. Pretty much.
So yeah, it's a solid one for me. I can't. I really did enjoy it.
One last point. Armie Hammer, I think, did a phenomenal job, and I've always liked him as an actor. But I think this is his, as you would say, Scott, leveling up.
Yep.
I think this is taking on a more mature role than I've seen him prior, though I haven't seen his entire body of work. But nonetheless.
Plus, he's got a ridiculous and wonderful name.
Yes.
Give him a lot of credit in this role, for sure.
So, all right. Steven, on to you for supporting.
All right. This was one I was wavering on until the final scene with the father, and that really cemented a 1 for me. There are a bunch of other really good scenes with other supporting characters, but none of them were and I know you guys will fight me on this, but or to some degree, but none of them were supporting characters should definitely get a 1 because of this scene. How we normally, or a lot of times we pick out a character that stands out. Yeah. Yes, I know. The Italian couple, the groundskeeper, what was her name? Mafalda.
How dare you not give credit to the Italian couple?
They're all great. They all have great scenes, and they're fun. They're a lot of fun. And actually, they do build the world. So I probably would have given this a 1 anyway. But that final scene with the father really cemented it for me and nailed it down as a 1 for this.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree. You mentioned all the ones that we picked out, but I never was purporting that this is the one that deserves a 1 head and shoulders above the other supporting cast. Just that you sort of stole what I was going to say, but I think it's a perfect way to say it, is that they built the world. I believe that these are the friends and family that he hangs out with in the summer, and they show up and for dinner or whatever, and they're sort of ridiculous over the top. They're the old Italian couple. Mafalda, the sort of housemaid that keeps everyone going, keeps it all together. So yeah, I think they all collectively deserve a 1, but I'm not saying anyone was stand out. Marcia was pretty solid too.
Yeah.
So
you, I'm sure, have all read a novel written like Pride and Prejudice. I don't know the exact one I'm trying to reference here, but where everyone goes to an estate in away from London or whatever it is, and so you have the small cast in this isolated thing, and you have it totally felt like one of those works.
No, I agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I never mentioned the mother also. The mother was phenomenal.
She was good.
She was definitely a driving.
I think his parents are both solid.
Yeah, she was definitely a driving force. Making sure Elio and Oliver found each other. You say confessing to Elio, even if Oliver ever did say, he actually had a thing for her son. She's like, nah, he told me, and grow up, essentially, just be happy. Wouldn't it be great if Elio goes with Oliver and everything like that? I think she was she knew more than she was letting on. I think I had a feeling that from what she did to help that relationship, she knew her husband was probably also gay. Yeah. But so for that, I think the mom actually was one of my, if not my favorite character besides Oliver and Elio. I think she usually, every time she was on screen, I was she was really good.
Yeah, but what's interesting about all these secondary characters is that they're all involved in this world that they can't talk about. Where they have to allude to things.
That's true, yeah.
And how she deals with her son and Oliver towards the end. Why don't you go,
would it be nice to get away for a couple of days or whatever, for them to,
It's all indirect speech acts, and like having to live that kind of. Everyone's lying, everyone's hiding, but they have to, and I think that the entire thing works towards themes. So
Yeah,
I agree. Very strong one.
Yeah, one for me.
Agreed. One's all around.
All right, Scott, dialogue. Speaking of speech acts,
all right, speech acts. The speech acts in this film. No, I mean, like, you guys sort of mentioned it, that the word we're going to use is natural and organic, and it certainly did feel like that. I believed a lot of the interactions. So, like, it was fine. I'm probably going to give it, like, a default 1. I don't think it deserves a 0. It wasn't, like, maybe you guys think it was more standout. Yes, there were some good scenes, especially, like, Michael Stuhlbarg as Elliot's father in the final, like, one of the final scenes. But overall, yeah, I bought into it. That's why I'm giving it a 1. But none of it was like necessarily like stand out, like that was an amazing speech. It's just like the natural things that I believe that people would be saying in this situation. So
I mean, I think there's one amazing speech that I could point to immediately that we can talk about for dialogue, and that's the speech that I've said 3 times already. Like the speech at the end with his father.
Yeah, it's
I think
good.
was great. But on top of that, even disregarding that, I think that a lot of the dialogue is really good. There are funny points. There are really points that just really hit home, like these little notes, these little beats of dialogue that really like
I get what you mean.
Hit the nail on the head for what the movie is trying to do, and I think that it does it throughout the film. There's a scene where they're so like this is going to go into style too, but like there's a scene where they're talking about liking each other, but not actually talking about it.
Like you're saying
in the plaza,
and
right?
they start off standing right next to each other, and then they spread out and go like around this
memorial.
fenced-in memorial, and that whole scene I think is really good dialogue. But like at the end, what does he say? He says like, "I just wanted you to know," or like Elio said, like he's saying like, "Hey, I feel this way," and he's like, "Why'd you tell me that?" And he says, "I just wanted you to know." And then he's like talking to himself. He's like, "I just wanted you to know. I just want," as they're going around the outside, like the memorials between them. He's like, "I just wanted you to know. I just wanted you to know." And then they meet up at the other side, and they continue the conversation, but it's kind of like cut off by Oliver at that point. And like that whole scene of dialogue was like really powerful and really good to me, I thought.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up that scene as well, because throughout the movie, there's a lot of conversations that clearly have double meaning.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was very great. Like, as organic and everything was, like, to be able to, like, intertwine those things and the way the themes are, and, like, how people speak to each other without speaking to each other. Like, you need to just give subtle hints without, also being true to yourself, but, having other people know who your true self. Like, even with Marcia and Elio, with the conversation they have after he gives her the book. It's like, I'm pretty sure that book is like what she's like, just read the book and then you kind of realize like who I am because I can't tell you. Let me use someone else's words, to kind of, give you the idea. So for me, that I think is a solid one for sure.
The interplay between English, Italian, and
I think there was some
French as well.
And German.
In German as well.
German, yeah.
All these, first of all, that 100% made me believe this universe they're building, because it felt a very intellectual haven in a European country, and with all these different cultures meeting there. But also goes to the whole things of like, we're privy to all of the dialogue that went on there because of subtitles. Oliver admits at the end that his grasp of Italian isn't probably as good as you thought it was throughout the rest of this work. People, like, even in plain sight, dialogue is hidden from certain characters. And that, I was very impressed by their work for that.
There's a lot of coded conversations that happen in this, both via the languages that they use, and via the way that they talk around certain things. And I think that, even just for that, is kind of brilliant dialogue design in the script.
All right, now you guys are right. It's probably a stronger one than I originally was going to give it to because of those 2 reasons, but good call. I'm still giving it a 1. But
Yeah, 1 for me, sure.
All right, Louis, have the pleasure of talking about the style.
So the style, I was very impressed with all the very wide shots of Italy. It definitely made you feel like it was there, and if you've never been there, you need to go. It's just beautiful how like they had the tracking shots. You know, when they're on the one of my favorite scenes, like when Oliver Elio had to catch up to Oliver because he was riding so fast on the bikes, and then you just see them go into the background, and the shot just stays there, and the music's playing. Which, by the way, you know, the soundtrack was phenomenal as well. Everything that they had with the 80s, and also just like the piano music that you heard, the
more classical stuff.
The classical things. But besides that, like this, I guess we're going to themes. The reoccurring motif of the apricot, which I thought was brilliant. It all kind of culminated with Elio fornicating one.
I don't know if I can look at an apricot the same way.
Yeah, no, of course not. But like, it's one of the things like
it's definitely the climax.
It's the forbidden fruit. Obviously, like Elio seeing Oliver drinking the apricot juice, wanting to get more, and like the relationship when they talk about the etymology and like the history of how the apricot has changed throughout history. That everything, the style was just very on point for me. Like there's many things that you guys could easily bring up, but those are like the ones that. Like the cinematography, the soundtrack, and then just like the reoccurring motif that is the sculptures also. If you guys want to, I don't know if you guys were thinking of that, but like that was another thing. The first thing that we see in the movie, just like photos of how they're studying sculpture and everything, and a lot of them are fragmented. Like they're seeing they're not excavating. They're like
what remains of
they're raising. They're bringing broken statues that are beautiful. Like they're describing just the way like how they feel alive and they're beautiful but they're also broken. Like these are things of the past that just it's all kind of projecting as well, like into these characters.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I certainly noticed the cinematography like straight away, and it was strong throughout the film. There was, like you said, like just amazing landscape shots, and Italy felt like sunny, and it was always like perfect weather all the time for the most part. Like it just would you're right, it was inviting
until the winter of Ilio's discontent.
Yeah, until the very end of the film, but since the main plot takes place over the 6 weeks of summer. But yeah, like just again, like I'll leave soundtrack more to you, Steve-O, but I do agree it was integrated very nicely. They had a couple like 80s songs, but not like cliched ones, and not too many of them either, which I very much appreciated, but also then melded to the classical stuff, which tied into Elio as a character as well. So yeah, but I was very impressed with the actual shots, like the blocking and the framing, just like the lighting as well, even like the countryside, and like you said, like the bike ride was a good one. So yeah, a very strong one for me on style.
So I just wanted a quick one before I give it off to you. It's interesting because between Dunkirk stylistically was magnificent in a completely different way.
Sure.
But I would compare this a little bit to Phantom Thread, which I thought Phantom Thread was the most important part of Phantom Thread was its style. And although I understand there are differences between the two ways, I thought that like this is comparable in how much I enjoyed the detail and the texture of the world they built.
Well, I think those two movies are easily the two most artsy movies of the
and they're closer in
Right?
execution. Yeah, we'll say.
I would agree with a lot of what you guys have said. The soundtrack, incredible. The cinematography, amazing throughout. Just the portrayal of Northern Italy in this is great. It reminded me a little bit of Aziz Ansari's show.
Master of None.
Master of None, yeah. It reminded me a little bit of the second season of that, at the very beginning. They do a couple episodes in Italy, and they did a very good job in that show of with the cinematography blocking out, like showing Italy in like an interesting way. Not to get into a big thing about Aziz Ansari.
I need to. I thought of that Michael Corleone at a part would see Apollonia blow up in the car.
All right.
Honestly,
slice a Godfather in there a little bit. Yeah.
I thought this did a better job of portraying Italy than The Godfather did.
I don't know about that.
But that being said, I thought that it was terrific. One thing I do want to add is just the sound design of this movie. Yeah, it's supposed to make you feel like that, Ian, and it did its job very well. The apricot scene was like one of the most disturbing things ever because of the sound.
In a way, but
Yeah. But
if you've seen it, you'll know what we mean.
Sound effects, the ambient sounds that are going on throughout this film are incredibly well done. There's a lot of care and attention paid to them, and I wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out to that. But I think it sounds like we're all giving this very strong ones for style, right?
Yeah, you're right. And you just made me think of something at the tail end there, where like Oliver and Ilya will be talking to each other on the street, and like cars will go by. So like, as a la real life, like
oh yeah, there's a lot of street noise in this, even though there's barely any traffic.
But you're right. That was nice sound design, a nice touch, and it made it more believable. It added to the authenticity of it all.
Yeah,
so that's all. It's my final thought on style.
Okay, recommendations. I would certainly recommend this. I think it's a very good movie. I'm not a huge fan of romance movies in general, and I thought this was very well done. And like, I really enjoyed this film watching it. I think artistically it's a beautiful film. It should be appreciated for that alone. And I also think the themes are important. So I give it a full recommendation to whoever, including, as I think you pointed out, any homophobic white nationalists. They should watch this too.
Yeah, maybe you'll learn something. Before I forget, I wanna get this out. Like, I'm trying to think of other Oscar movies that were romance films, and the only one that's coming up,
just Phantom Thread, I think.
Well, not just this year, but the last since we've been doing this, this is our third year doing this. So since we've been doing this, first year we had Brooklyn.
Yes,
right.
This is better than Brooklyn.
La La Land, I guess, but I put that more in the like musical realm, right? Better than La La Land. Moonlight, perhaps, but I don't know if I call that a romance. I don't necessarily call it a romance. It's a coming of age story with romantic parts to it.
To an extent, but Moonlight, I think it's an easy comparison to make, but an unfair comparison.
I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that should be lumped into the same. That shouldn't be lumped in the same category, because Moonlight's a very different movie than this. But I think it's certainly the best romance film that we've seen in the last 3 years that are in the Oscar category.
In a similar vein.
And I definitely recommend it to anybody. You know, like saying this is I don't know if I want to. I'm not gonna get it. I'm not gonna get into shit. But like anyway, I recommend it. Go check it out. Go watch this movie, and I don't know. I think you'll enjoy it. Whoever you are, I think you'll enjoy the movie. And if you don't,
then you won't.
Maybe you won't. But
sure. No, I'll say it this way. Like, if this wasn't an Oscar film, it just wasn't a film I was going to go see just because, like you said, like, I'm not a fan of romance, like these types of films in general. But having seen it because it's in the noms, yeah, it was a very well done, put together film. So I will recommend it. But I just, giving my I admit that I normally wouldn't know if it weren't an Oscar film,
right.
But I do think it was a very well done and enjoyable film that people could get a lot out of. So,
See, I'm having trouble recommending this. I think it was a good movie. Styles, as I mentioned before, it's just not. I can't imagine recommending it to everyone.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you guys heard me throw. As we took breaks during the movie. It was just like it's a slow burn. I'm not necessarily feeling it. Having discussed it, I enjoy it much more than I did shortly after we finished it. But I can't say that I do recommend it. I'm not sure if I'll watch it again.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I think it's definitely a movie you should probably, if you're into style and if you're like definitely into movies, you should. But if you're a general audience goer, I can't say this is a must watch personally. Like I mentioned before, I am a fan of romance movies. On occasion, like I will watch one. I have some favorites, but this one, I was like, it's, and coming down to it, it's pretty formulaic. It's not necessarily turning the genre on its head or anything like that. It is what it is. I'd say for sure, if you're into movies and you want to, check out all the Best Picture nominations, everything, check it out. But I'd have to give it a 0.
Oh, fair enough. And I'll give out the scores. Stephen, Mr. Thurlow. I was going to say Mr. Hermosi, but same person right there.
Call me by his name.
For myself, gave it a 9, and Louis gave it a 7.
Really?
Yeah, giving it overall an 8.5.
Curmudgeonly old
I
Louis.
mean, like, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty solid. Yeah, it's. I don't think it was a perfect 10 movie, but I think it's really strong. It's 8.5. I was thinking 8.7. Doesn't really matter.
I actually completely agree that, but I think that the themes elevate this above
Beyond
just
the formula,
a
that it follows. Yeah,
Yeah.
movie.
it's fair.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with
maybe.
that.
It's an important film for our time, and I think again, the novel, from what I understand, is like has a history behind it. So, I can see like
People giving more weight.
See, I mentioned before, like, I didn't know there was a source material, so I'm actually kind of, I definitely might want to read this book just to,
Fair
not
enough.
to compare it, but just,
Let's see what it's like.
considering, it's been very, as you guys were saying, it's, very, very well received.
anything else around it.
That's it for me.
All right, I'm Jonathan Ian Menzer here with Louis Duran,
Later.
Scott the Low,
Ciao.
and Stephen Rossi.
Louis stole my goodbye line.
See you next time.
Ciao.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.